with Blue-Red Delver, Blue-Red Burn if you prefer. Blue-Red Delver, the name for the weekend here. Michael Tabler with High Tide. Do you have a favorite in this? You know, we already talked about the way these techs are going to match up against each other, but do you want one of them to win, or do you have a preference?
No, not much of a preference. I mean, I like the Blue-Red Delver, Blue-Red Burn deck a lot, but be happy with either one in the finals. I think the matchup is a lot closer game one, but as we were talking about game two after sideboarding, I think we both agree that this is really a nightmare matchup for Michael, with High Tide facing down just a slew of cheap cards that really disrupt what he's trying to do.
You can see Terrell on the right. He looks pretty excited to get this match underway, and Terrell went into this as the 5th seed. His opponent, Michael Tabler, was the number 1 seed. That means that Michael Tabler gets the option on play or draw. What do you think he's going to choose? I think he'll choose play.
Probably play. You generally don't want to be on the draw against the deck with Delver and Goblin Guide. And we'll see how this goes. Island off of a Scalding Tarn coming down for Michael. And he did choose to be on the play.
And in case you're wondering, we just got word from Glenn Jones. Who?
Glenn Jones.
That's right. That Joe Bernal is up game 1 as we were discussing that match. While Michael Tabler was running off, we wanted to get the other match going because the Esper Blade Mirror can take quite a while, and Joe Bernal is up the first game.
Yeah, surprisingly quick game for that mirror. Wonder how Joe won.
I bet you it was a Geist.
Could have been. Yeah, that exact card we were just talking about. We see a Ponder from Michael Tabler, looking to just smooth out his draws, make sure he makes those critical land drops every turn to make his High Tides that much more impactful. On Terrell's side, we see Scalding Tarn in the front of his hand. Looks like he just drew a Vapor Snag, another flashback to standard. Not going to do much against Michael's deck with no creatures.
Now, just a quick conversation with our Twitterverse out there. Brandon Steve 3 asks, we just saw High Tide fight through a whole bunch of hate. You think it can't do it here? There's actually quite a bit more hate in Terrell Boaz's deck to fight this, and a lot of it is actually free hate and better hate than the kind of hate that Michael Tabler fought against before. Sorcery speed hate and instant hate are very different things. And also, I'm certainly not counting out High Tide. I've played High Tide for many years, and it's still anyone's match, obviously. But I am definitely going to say Terrell has a lot of weapons, and that they could matter very much.
Yeah, another big difference between Terrell's deck and the deck we just saw fight against High Tide is Terrell's able to put on a clock quickly. And so that hate is going to be that much more effective. Michael's going to have less time to build up a mass of cards and fight through it. We're not counting him out, but it's going to be an uphill battle after sideboarding.
Absolutely. Now, Terrell Boaz puts the best kind of brainstorm into effect, the main phase brainstorm. He follows it up, Scalding Tarn, fetch, getting out a Volcanic Island. There's nothing to fear from Michael Tabler with his Volcanic Islands. These players, as always in the top 8s, have access to each other's deck lists, so he knows that he can just get the best land possible, and that's just fine. Delver of Secrets in play for Terrell, and we see a main phase brainstorm now for Michael Tabler. I believe that was main phase. I apologize if that was not. We might find out in a moment.
I think it was. We'll see if he untaps or not here. Chuckling a bit.
There it is, the main phase brainstorm and a fetch.
And flips that island that he put back on top right into play with that Misty Rainforest.
That interaction is one of my favorite interactions in Magic. Just taking that top card off of my library, knowing it's a land, and just smacking it right into play with my fetch land.
Yeah, very satisfying.
Oh, it's so satisfying. It feels like I just drew a card. I know I didn't, but it feels like it.
Anything to draw cards, even feel like we're drawing them.
Yeah, I mean, if I could have the feeling of drawing cards all the time, that would be great. Ponder.
We see a ponder here from Michael. Again, looking to smooth things out, make sure these turns go as planned. The Delver could cause problems, but that alone is going to be, well, we'll see if it flips or not.
The Delver with a blind flip attempt does not make it. It does not know the secret.
Not yet, anyway. Tends to learn the secret after it's brainstormed a bit or pondered about
Yes.
what that secret might be. And we see a fetch land come down from Terrell. Extra card slides off Michael's deck, no problem though. We see a handful of blue spells from Michael. This is pretty much exactly where you want to be as the High Tide player.
Yeah.
Playing a land every turn, handful of spells. Not too dangerous of a clock on the other side. And I think we may have some fairly dead cards in Terrell's hand, as we mentioned there would be for Game 1.
And we see a Preordain from Michael.
Yeah, Michael's goal, really use those 1-mana spells, Preordain, Ponder, Brainstorm, to make sure he can execute his game plan consistently. And if there's one thing High Tide is, it's very consistent. Using another Preordain you see here, putting a total of 4 cards on the bottom between those 2 Preordains. So just sifting right through things he's not interested in drawing. And has he played a land this turn?
I believe so.
Okay.
I am not 100% certain. It is 11:30 p.m. local, and so that means that we have been here for 15 and a half hours. And after about, a little less hours than that, you start getting a little bit woozy. I know that we were also here broadcasting till I think about 1 a.m. last night with the Standard. So if he played a land, I apologize. I think he did. I think he has already played a land.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll see if he has. He looks to be, not sure if he has or not. Just wondering to see if he'd managed to develop yet. He is looking awfully hard at an island, so we'll see soon. And a handful of cards that we can't quite see. Oh,
Well,
maybe he didn't play a
I'm
land.
gonna trust the table judge and spotter there to know whether or not this has happened already. So.
And Michael, might be getting ahead of himself a bit. Looks like we're counting turns here.
A little bit harder to count with a lot of the cantripy effects, so.
Yeah, all ones. We're not really sure when they all happened.
It's very doable. You just add 1.
Yeah. 1, 1, 1. What's the total? How many mana have you had access to so far?
And we're just doing a quick double check here. The judge wanting to make sure.
Seems like we're not the only ones who are not quite sure if that land's been played yet.
Yeah, and I think one of the things to realize, I'm pretty confident that Michael Tabler here, it's been a long day. He's tired. He's been playing this deck for, gosh, like I said, 15 hours ago. Or actually, pardon me. In his case, his tournament started about 12 hours ago, and it's just been a long day. So don't cry foul yet, fair internet.
Yeah, especially High Tide, a deck that takes a lot of concentration to play. And we're seeing a candelabra attempted by Michael.
I almost just called it a candelabra.
Acceptable.
Candelabra out there. And we see the fetch at the end of the turn here from Terrell.
The island comes out. And we'll see if that Delver is able to flip and increase the clock.
And untap, upkeep. Let's see what we got. I know the secret.
Blind flip. And we see the ponder come to Terrell's hand.
Vincent Price. Ponder. 3-moon ponder.
So we see that Delver flip. Ponder is going to allow Terrell to look at a few more cards. And
I see a Snapcaster Mage. We're being a little quiet here. I see a Lightning Bolt and another card that I cannot determine.
yeah, the lightning bolt not, not able to take out any creatures from Michael's deck because he doesn't have any, but it does increase the clock, which is very important.
In for 3. That knocks Michael Tabler down to 14. Michael, 5th land.
Draws handful of blue spells. He, may try something this turn, but may feel like he's got a little more time.
Terrell puts his hand down on the table and waits to see what happens. If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here in the booth with Ben Hayes. This is the first of our semifinal matches. In the other bracket, it's Esperblade versus Esperblade. The winner there will face the winner here.
With Joe Bernal currently up a game, right?
That's correct. Last we checked, Joe Bernal was up 1 game versus Lauren Nolan in the Esperblade mirror. Near mirror, really. This was not a 75-card mirror. Joe's deck, I think, far more suited to the mirror.
Yeah, featuring a few Geist of St. Traft and Merchant Scroll here. Looks like it's going to try to get a High Tide. A bunch of cards from Michael's hand or from somewhere going over to Michael's graveyard. I don't know if those came from his hand or his deck. Looks like his deck, and he seems to be shuffling again. Not too big of a problem because he did just Merchant Scroll for that High Tide. His deck was just randomized. No problem there, just revealing a little bit of information to Terrell.
Untap. No end of turn burn spells there from Terrell. In for 3, down to 11, he says. And pass. That looked like a pass to me. Did it look like one to you?
I think so. And either Michael considering his options here, or Terrell maybe considering something end of turn. Okay.
Cunning Wish at end of turn.
Huh.
Tapping out. Opening himself up to the possibility of a... Good lord, did you just see that hand? I'm trying to be really quiet now. It looked like a handful of Force of Wills.
Terrell's hand?
Yes.
Yeah, I see a lot of cards there. And I do think I saw at least a couple of Force of Wills.
And a Pact of Negation is brought forth to Michael Tabler's hand with that Cunning Wish.
Yeah, and we're just being a little extra quiet because the hall is now pretty much empty, and even though we're pretty far away from the feature match area, we don't want them to hear anything that we're saying about what's in either player's hand.
Now, Snapcaster.
And Terrell says, "How's this brainstorm?"
Apparently it's okay. Okay, and our news from Glenn Jones is that we are going to a Game 3 in the other match. So Joe Bernal and Lauren Nolan going through quick fighting throughout all the way to Game 3 now. Lauren Nolan coming back, and we go back to this match in progress, still in Game 1. Terrell Boaz at the end of the turn puts that Snapcaster down and increases his clock to a 5-point clock.
I think we see a turnabout here from Michael.
This is an upkeep, I believe, casting of Turnabout. And Terrell
goes
throws
with that
down
lightning
a bolt.
bolt. Yep. And hard to say who is really advantaged here. Terrell has this clock going. Michael has a handful of blue spells, which is usually where the High Tide player wants to be, but it could go either way. I think the Turnabout
hit the creatures.
Yeah, Turnabout tapped those creatures, just
Yeah.
using it to gain 5 life there.
There is no mode, so to speak, on Turnabout. It's not like Cryptic Command where you have to name it at the beginning. You do have to name a target. The target is the player. So you can say, Turnabout, target you. And when it resolves, then you choose which element of the Turnabout happens. It can be quite sneaky that way.
Yeah, a lot of choices there. It can choose to tap or untap at least lands and creatures. I think also artifacts.
That's the 3 that you can choose.
So 6 choices, and then with 6 choices after choosing which player you want to target with that. That's the only commitment you have to make right off the bat. Am I targeting you or am I targeting myself? And see Michael fetching out another island, shuffling his deck. And players with chatting back and forth a bit. And Michael making sure his deck is sufficiently randomized.
Michael Tabler patiently shuffling his Dragon Shield sleeves there and hoping that he can manage to win on this next turn on tap.
Facing down a pretty scary 5 damage from Terrell, which would put him into range of any of the burn that Terrell has access to.
Remember, we know that Michael Tabler has already Cunning Wished for a Pact of Negation. If Terrell remembers that is another question.
Yeah, we'll see how much Terrell has in the way of blue spells himself to be able to defend against whatever Michael does this turn. I think Michael is going to feel forced to go off this turn if he can.
I would feel deeply uncomfortable if I were Michael waiting any longer. I would want to go for it.
Yeah, 7 life passing against 5 damage. A little scary.
A little word from our director. Apparently the pause that we had there was a ruling that was being given by a judge, so that was why we were pausing there. That was not Michael slowly doing all kinds of stuff. There was a little bit of ruling action going on.
Yep, so just taking that time to randomize a little more while the ruling was being given. No problem with that. We see a bunch of islands from Michael and a lot of blue spells in hand. As we were just saying, we feel that he'll be forced to pull the trigger this turn, or that he'll at least feel that he has to. So, considering his options, and once he decides, we'll see what Terrell has.
Okay, that ruling is apparently ongoing right now. You can see Glenn Jones chatting with the players in the background. Our judge on the left, Glenn Jones on the right, Michael Tabler on the left, Terrell, Boaz on the right. These players right now, I'm not quite sure what our ruling is regarding. I'll let you know when we find out.
They're going through some ancient ritual of ripping up paper, each writing something on it, handing it over.
I think they might be actually throwing salt on the ground and then slapping their own chests.
I did see that in the background.
Okay. And apparently, whatever it is, it's done. Yeah. Okay, now he's ready. Now he's ready to go.
They were submitting their lottery number picks. Just trying to get him in on time.
You can hear a lot of laughter over there. I don't know what was going on, but we're going to have the beginning of this turn. Michael Tabler starts it off. High Tide.
Name of the deck, and he drops a High Tide to start.
Tide's at 2, Storm is at 1.
And access to a lot of mana for Michael, but also access to more mana for Terrell. High Tide is a symmetrical effect, as I've mentioned a couple times. So Terrell's islands, which Volcanic Island is, all tap for 2 mana here.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Ben Hayes in this semifinal match. Michael Tabler has pulled the trigger. He started attempting to go off. We're going to have to see what happens now.
Yeah, he has a pad out, probably to keep track of mana and storm.
10 mana in his pool, uses the Candelabra to untap those 6 lands, leaves him with 4 mana in pool.
Yeah, we actually have a similar pad here in the booth that we're keeping track of things up top. And Michael looks to be considering his options. There's some forms being passed back and forth. I think we might have been right about that pact.
Well, just okay. There's some paper there. Okay.
Just doing their taxes.
Thank you,
Well-
Ben. I'm gonna start getting slap happy. We have our second spell, Meditate, and some extra mana tapped for that. Storm is at 2.
And
3
we
mana
hear
in pool. I don't know that Michael realizes he's got 3 mana in pool, but unless something else happened, he's got 3 mana in pool. 2 mana in pool. Storm at 3.
we hear a lot of laughter over from the feature match area, so hopefully whatever ruling has been going on is at least keeping people over there entertained, and not too tough for anyone when you see all those lands tapped.
10 mana for 12 mana total now.
See what he's going with, and
Casts
ooh,
a Time Spiral with 6 mana floating.
this is exactly the kind of position that the High Tide deck wants to be in. Got those 2 candelabras, one of them untapped. You see a Force of Will from Terrell, and here's the big fight. I mean, can the High Tide resolve? Can it give Michael enough gas to continue going off? See a
That's
Pact
the
of Negation.
6th spell, Pact of Negation.
Another Force of Will. Okay.
Tosses a Vapor Snag. Storm at 7.
And we'll see if Michael has anything to do about this.
Now it's a question. I'm wondering what is that second Force of Will targeting?
Ooh, a Fluster
Storm. Storm at 8. Mana at 5.
So, interestingly here, Flusterstorm is going to counter that unless 8 is paid, and Terrell can make 6 mana, so not quite. We see a third Force of Will from Terrell. Wow.
And this is targeting the original spell or the pact. I'm not sure which one he's targeting. He's targeting
So all those Force of Will seem to be targeting that. Okay, there's a Force of Will, looks like remaining on the stack, targeting that Time Spiral. And
Wow.
Oh, I think we saw another Force of Will in Michael's hand.
Oh my God, you're right.
And Michael choosing how he wants to handle this.
The current stack we can see.
And just keeping all of his numbers correct on that pad there. He has 3 cards, and unless I'm mistaken, I believe he does have a Force of Will. Okay, using Candelabra with a stack currently at a Force of Will targeting a Time Spiral. Okay.
Force of Will there.
It's another way to do it. He untaps those lands, then taps them and hard casts a Force of Will, leaving himself with 2 cards in hand.
And we see a fetch from Terrell.
So that's going to give Terrell access to 6 blue mana, and I'm not sure how many cards he has left.
I'm not sure either.
I don't know if he has any, but one thing about doing this here.
Ooh, don't like that unless there's
Well, if he does have a Force, it is exactly 5. So, not what I would have searched for though.
Okay, so why I don't like that for many reasons. This means he's shuffled land back into his deck, which he didn't really need to do here. Now, I'm not sure if Michael's aware of it, but he has 6 mana in his pool right now.
Yeah, he's been tapping as if he may not be aware, untapping those 3 islands and retapping them. So it's hard to tell. It gets tricky with High Tide, especially as we mentioned. This is a deck he's been playing all day for, 10, 11, maybe even 12 hours at this point. So, it wears on you. It's a tough deck to play for so long. And when those High Tides get going, you're untapping and tapping lands. It's sometimes hard to keep track of. So we're not sure exactly how much mana Michael thinks he has, and we'll see how this plays out. Time Spiral, gonna draw both players 7 cards. And having a bit of a conversation about that Time Spiral. And both players seem to be waiting, maybe counting up what's happened this turn. It has been a long turn, they're just actually just confirming life totals with each other, making sure that, through these fetch land activations and anything else that happened, a lot of Force of Wills were cast, and they want to make sure they have those life totals correct. Not quite as important for Terrell, because we're not going to see Michael burning him out. But
this is one of the reasons why Michael made sure to cast his Force of Will with an actual mana, so that he didn't drop his life to 6.
Yeah.
I think that's what's being, and we're just making sure. And it looks like there's only those 2 cards removed, so that looks like his life total is indeed 7.
Yep. And important, because this Time Spiral not only giving Michael 7 cards, also going to give Terrell 7 cards. And if he draws into a couple lightning bolts, he's got 2 red there, and he can point them both at Michael if Michael had fallen to 6.
I mean, this is not I guess it would be like 1998 rules. You actually can die while you're going off with High Tide, not like in the past where you would not die being at 0 life. Now, if you don't know how that worked, basically, your check for your life total killing you wouldn't happen until the end of a phase, so you could drop down to 0 briefly and not be dead, but you would still be dead if you got decked. So High Tide could, for example, go to negative life because of Fire Blasts and such and still win.
Yeah, a lot of pretty interesting interactions when the rules were that way, and life totals have been updated. You see Terrell at 13, taking a few damage from the Tarn and the many Force of Wills that he cast that turn. And we actually do see 2 lightning bolts in his hand. So really tight play by Michael, choosing to use that Candelabra, hard cast a Force instead of paying a life. And at this point, after the High Tide's resolved, it's hard to stop the deck. So we'll see if Terrell can muster any kind of
Another candle.
Defense against this.
Another ponder.
And looking at 3 cards. And updating probably mana count and storm count.
The tide is currently at 2, by which I mean islands make 2 mana.
Yep, and Storm is at, looking over at our pad, quite a few.
Yeah, we're at the 13 count.
So, Michael with a handful of cards. We'll see if he has something to continue this chain with.
Taps for 10.
Yep. And Michael trying to decide on a card. He also has that Candelabra as an option. I believe that might be a turnabout.
Yeah, I think it is.
Looks a little yellowish. Yeah, there we see a turnabout.
Turnabout.
I wonder who that's targeting. I imagine it's targeting Michael, but he could be looking to tap out Terrell.
Michael still has. We'll find out as soon as we know who that is targeting. Michael still has a ton of mana available and a Candelabra, so.
And not necessarily in a position where he needs to target himself, but.
Yep, that it is.
Okay.
Targeting Terrell. Terrell adding some mana to the pool. 1 red so far.
Firing off a lightning bolt. And
there's the lightning bolt.
Looks like he may be adding another red here.
And that is a red and a blue.
Yep, puts
Another
Michael down
lightning bolt.
to 1 life if this resolves.
Leaves a blue in Terrell's pool.
So, I think we are going to see this turnabout resolve. Yep. And Michael considering his options here.
Now, if Terrell Boaz has a Psychic Purge, he could kill him. But, of course, he does not have a Psychic Purge. Bolt number 2 is still on the stack, actually, right now. Michael Tabler thinking about it.
Okay, so that one hasn't resolved yet. Yep, Michael is at 4.
Okay.
Trying to figure out if he's willing to go down to 1. I believe we see a Flusterstorm at the front of his hand, which may be what he's considering firing at that bolt. With a storm of getting close to 15 at this point, Terrell will not be able to pay for that giant Flusterstorm.
And Terrell, it looks like he's tapping that for mana.
Yeah, and that
means
bolt,
he's got blue in his pool.
Yeah, the bolt seems to have resolved. Michael's life total updated to 1. Players discussing.
Michael Tabler here.
Michael thinking about probably how much mana he can get to work with the looks like 4, maybe 5 cards that he has left in his hand. So checking the pad to see his floating mana, storm count. Going through the thought process of solving this puzzle of how he's gonna try to finish this game.
7 mana in pool. It's the number I also have figured out.
Good to know we're accurate with what the table judge has, and that 7 mana is going to allow him to use the Candelabra to untap all those islands if he chooses to do that. And then he can produce 12 more mana, and that's assuming no more High Tide get cast, which is, not necessarily a safe assumption when you're playing against a deck called High Tide.
1 mana in pool remaining. Terrell with 3 blue mana in pool, but tapped out.
Yep, and I think a few cards left in hand, only those couple of bolts spent, really. So, yeah, a few cards in hand, but a hand down on the table over there. And we see Michael tap 6 islands and fire off another time spiral.
Did he declare an attack step? Force of will from Terrell.
I don't think he declared an attack step. He may have. It wasn't clear to me. Okay, he did.
Okay, so he declared an attack step. That cleared out the pool. So now we're in the second main phase. Terrell empty of mana. And we see a Pact of Negation here to fight over this time spiral.
Huh.
And we're going to go to... it's not the next game, no. We are doing the next time spiral.
Okay. I was almost faked out by Terrell picking up cards and shuffling them. But yeah, we're going to see what Terrell can come up with. Michael's deck is very redundant at this point. Would basically take him drawing lands and High Tides to whiff here. Everything else lets him see more cards. I guess he also has Force of Wills and Flusterstorms that are potential blanks, but even one Preordain, one Ponder, one Brainstorm can keep him going, so you don't often see High Tide fizzle. Now that I'm talking about it so much, though, maybe it'll happen. We'll see. 6
mana in Michael Tabler's pool. The storm now so large that he will definitely be able to kill with a single Brain Freeze. Now, the thing is, he can't just let Terrell untap, though, because Terrell might burn him out if he gets to untap. So Michael Tabler probably going to have to Blue Sun Zenith to win this game safely.
Yep, I think we will see him going for that Blue Sun kill if he can manage it. And a couple islands I see in Michael's hand. And yep, starts out by playing one of those. I say starts out, but this turn is now in main phase 2 and has been going on for a little bit of time.
5 mana in pool.
Yeah, Ponder looking to keep this chain going.
I'm hoping to see some element of what he's got in his hand. He's guarding it so well. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Ben Hayes, and it looks like we're about all to turn into pumpkins. Midnight is about to strike, and Michael Tabler here with High Tide. This is the first game of this semifinal match. Meanwhile, the Esper Stoneblade players are in game 3.
And Merchant Scroll here from Michael.
Okay, now that is a monster of a card right now. 3 mana left in his pool. Merchant Scroll, essentially a tutor for the best card left in Michael Tabler's deck. Or not left, but the best card in Michael Tabler's deck right now. It's probably going to be either a Cunning Wish, if he doesn't already have one, or another High Tide. One of those two most likely. There's the Cunning Wish.
And we do see Cunning Wish giving Michael access to any number of cards from his sideboard. He has 14 unique cards in that sideboard.
And Terrell not giving up yet. He's got a Force of Will.
Yeah, it goes for a Force of Will on that Cunning Wish, and it's the danger of casting Tide Spiral against a deck that has Force of Wills of its own.
Pact of Negation. And now Michael Tabler has cast Pact of Negation enough times that he's going to need High Tides to survive should he... Oh, and Terrell is like, you got me. Yep. Okay.
Never gets to that next upkeep anyway.
That was my last huzzah. Whew. Now, all of that aside, that's just the first game, but guess what? We have another little thing where one of you can become a winner at home as well. We always have, during our top 8s of all of these matchups, a premium giveaway for Star City Games. The Star City Games premium giveaway gives a viewer like you at home access to 3, 6, or 12 months of Star City Games premium for free. I'm Adrian Sullivan.
Ben Hayes.
And the way you get involved in our little trivia contest is pretty simple. We're going to ask you a trivia question. The hashtag SCG Premium will have to be in your tweeted answer to this trivia question. If you have the correct answer, one person amongst those correct answers will be selected to get 6 free months of Star City Games Premium. So, if you've been paying attention this weekend, you'll know what it's in our top 8, what decks were in our top 8. So, what is the highest converted casting cost spell in the entire top 8? Tweet your answer with the hashtag SCG Premium, and if you are correct, one lucky person amongst those correct answers will be given 6 free months of Star City Games Premium. What is the highest converted casting cost card in the top 8? Let us know what you think that is. Meanwhile, going back to our sideboard discussion from earlier, while there are a lot of options here, I think, as you discussed earlier for Terrell Boaz, he has access to potentially 14 cards that he could reasonably choose to bring in this matchup.
Yeah, really, it's only that Price of Progress that's probably not going to come in against the deck of all islands, but every other card are reasonable inclusions. Surgical Extraction, hitting important combo pieces, Flusterstorm being another cheap counterspell for defense, Red Elemental Blast and Pyroblast, great against a mono blue deck. Even Smash to Smithereens could come in to kill a Candelabra. We saw 3 of those from Michael last game. So finally, one Vendilion Click, which, nice against combo decks. You can deploy it at the end of turn, and looks like these two players pretty good-natured, shuffling up for game 2.
And we have a result in Lauren Nolan, surprise all of us here, defeating his opponent, Joe Bernal, in 3 games. Now, we said that Joe Bernal had the advantage game 1, and he did win game 1. Going to the sideboard, Lauren Nolan evens things up, brings in his own Geist of St. Traft, brings in Sword of Feast and Famine, has access to another Supreme Verdict to fight against the opponent's Geist of St. Traft, and has access to Thoughtseize and Duress. Wow, a lot of cards. On the other side of the table, Joe Bernal actually has a few less cards in his sideboard that actually matter, so I think that's what probably happened, is Lauren Nolan lost game 1 because he was just a massive matchup disadvantage. Joe Bernal loses the next 2, though, because Lauren Nolan switches that and just flips it over. In this match, you can see Terrell Boaz on the right, shuffling up after having sideboarded here, and Michael Tabler on the left. He has what's practically a non-sideboard. It's a Cunning Wish sideboard. And for the most part, when it comes to these Cunning Wish sideboards, the way that it works is all of these cards are targets for Cunning Wish, and the only thing you usually do is you sideboard in and out cards that you would want to have in your hand, but you don't think you would have time to Cunning Wish for. So I wouldn't be surprised if, for example, the Snap is sideboarded in, for example, or the Spell Pierce was sideboarded in, or even one of the Wipeaways, potentially. But for the most part, sideboards like this often just stay completely untouched throughout a match.
Yeah, you're not gonna you have the option to bring some of these cards in because you're not going to be wishing for all of them in a single game, but having them still in your board and having the option of getting them with wish is always nice. You generally want to bring in the ones that are good, but not things you're going to wish for. I agree. We could see that Snap coming in. We could see a Wipe Away coming in. I think that's definitely possible.
Well, I know that Michael Tabler has also definitely sideboarded in that Spell Pierce in against decks like this in the past, so I expect to see the Spell Pierce not in his sideboard after game 1.
Yeah, Spell Pierce a nice way for him to fight those blasts, and really probably not something he's going to be Cunning Wishing for.
I mean, a 4-mana Spell Pierce is not a very exciting Spell Pierce.
Yeah, if he's doing that, I would hope he'd rather find something like a Pact of Negation.
Exactly. Pact of Negation or even a Flusterstorm. Turn 1 bolts to the face.
Yep.
Take it.
Mountain Lightning Bolt, in this case, Volcanic Island Chain Lightning. So the little different. Terrell, access to blue mana here. Michael plays an island and gets a Candelabra down early. A good start for him, and it looks like Terrell just drew a Delver. Oh, plays it face down in defense mode, and then flips it up. And you see Delver of Secrets. Michael draws, looks like an island, has a couple lands, and Terrell sacrifices that Scalding Tarn.
Now, if I was Michael Tabler, I would be thanking my lucky stars that I won that last game. That was such a squeaker. Down to 1 life versus Terrell Boaz's deck here. And then all it would have taken was just, for example, not having, using the Merchant Scroll, getting, let's say, not the Blue Sun Zenith, but getting a Brain Freeze instead, and then Terrell just untapping and bolting you. He had to have so many things go right. We saw that Candelabra play where he untapped a few of his lands to hard cast a Force of Will while going off, exactly keeping himself alive at 1 life. Good play there by Michael Tabler, and now we're in game 2. These players have seen each other's sideboards, and he knows how much hate is waiting for him.
And speaking of that hate, Terrell looks like he just picked up a Surgical Extraction. I see Surgical Extraction. Looks like a Pyroblast and a Snapcaster Mage in Terrell's hand. Oh. Huh. Just going to see that Snapcaster Mage come down as an Ambush Viper.
The Ambush Viper is awesome.
Yeah,
Don't knock it.
Adding 2 damage to the clock here. Comes across for 5. And if Terrell doesn't have anything, it's going to drop into 9.
It's a 2-turn clock at this point. Potentially even a 1-turn clock.
If we see a burn spell or something, yeah. And I think, Terrell's hand is just loaded. It looks like a Pyroblast, a Surgical Extraction, possibly even a Flusterstorm I might have seen there.
Michael Tabler lays his 4th land, a Scalding Tarn. Starts off with a Merchant Scroll. Look at that hand.
Yeah, and and also a Snapcaster Mage to rebuy any of these, so...
Wow.
Really just a wall of defense against this mono blue combo deck.
And Merchant Scroll works. What are we getting?
Yeah, see 3 of those sideboard cards we talked about in Terrell's hand. Surgical Extraction, Pyroblast, Flusterstorm, Snapcaster to do it all again.
I mean, I think maybe Terrell became counter Ambush Viper.
Yeah, I mean, adding in this 2 damage, knowing that he's going to be able to use all of his mana every turn, he's going to be able to put up 4 spells to defend against Michael, wanting to get that extra 2 damage in that looks like it's going to be at least 4, maybe even 6. We see Michael choose a Pact of Negation off of Merchant Scroll.
And leaving the building, Peter Martinez, Joe Bernal, friends, all kinds of Chicago on the way out the door. Hot sauce for. Okay. Sorry to see Joe leave. I was actually, I think I made the claim this morning that I thought that Joe might win it.
Yeah, and he got pretty close.
Pretty close. Pretty close.
We see Terrell here using a fetch land and untapping, picking up another card. Really great hand for Terrell, and no, clock already established. This is what we were talking about before the match started. The real difference between the High Tide matchup against Esper Stoneblade, which had some hate, and the High Tide matchup against a Blue-Red Delver deck that has hate. The Blue-Red Delver deck can do something like this. It can have 5 power on the board very quickly, committing very few resources to that for a cheap cost. And he's got all these 1-mana answers. So, a High Tide attempted by Michael Tabler. And don't think Terrell... Oh. It looks like that High Tide resolved.
And the Tide would then be at 1 if that Tide has resolved.
Yeah, it's gone to Michael's graveyard. Michael is writing something down. And I guess Terrell looking to fight over whatever Michael follows up with. One thing about Terrell choosing to let that High Tide resolve, it does potentially give him enough mana to use that Snapcaster Mage.
This is true. This is true. I'm actually in a matchup like this. It's a conditional question about which way you go when it comes to those cards.
Yeah, he chooses to let it resolve here. It essentially turns one more card in his hand on. You see Michael looking for a Meditate, and I think, okay, in response to that Meditate, Terrell is using Surgical Extraction. I would guess he's targeting High Tide here. And Terrell in good shape with Surgical Extraction on the stack, a Flusterstorm and Pyroblast in hand, and that Snapcaster Mage.
I know a couple people were asking on Twitter, and you can follow us at SCG Live and the conversation, hashtag SCGCIN, CIN, about Caleb Durward not making top 8 and what his deck list was. I'm putting a link to that in a tweet at Adrian L. Sullivan. We see a Meditate being fired off here.
Yep, and we just saw, looks like that Surgical resolved and took out all the High Tides. So Tide, currently 2. Not going to be 2 in any other turns if this turn isn't the last turn of the game.
Surgical for free. Only 2 life with the Phyrexian mana cost. Meditate still on the stack.
Yeah, life total resource that Terrell is more than happy to pay. And Meditate. This may be in response to the Meditate, this Scalding Tarn is getting cracked. And Terrell may have a response to that fetch land activation. He does not. Island comes down for Michael, and then Misty sacrificed another island comes down for Michael. So 2 more islands, representing as many as 4 mana right now with the Tide at 2. And I like Terrell's position right now. I think with that Tide at 2, access to 5 mana, he can cast the Flusterstorm, Pyroblast, Snapcaster Mage, and then another 1 mana spell. And we see Pyroblast come down targeting Meditate, and Pact of Negation looks to counter that Pyroblast. And see a Flusterstorm come out from Terrell, and okay, looks like Michael just scoops it up.
Yeah, he sees the writing on the wall. There's too many things to deal with.
Yeah, as we discussed, that played out probably exactly as Terrell planned. Play a couple early guys, put a clock on, and then have this wall of disruption that he brought in from his sideboard. We mentioned as many as 14 cards might be coming in from Terrell's sideboard, and he has things that he's perfectly willing to take out. So, looking at Terrell's deck, speaking of things to take out, there's Vapor Snags to take out. He has Burn that might not be as good, especially the Sorcery Speed Chain Lightning. And then those 3 Price of Progress. 3 Grim Lavamancer might also come out. They're, a very strong card, but maybe not quite as fast as what Terrell's looking for, and great when it's killing creatures, when it's getting card advantage in that way.
Yeah, I mean, the cards that seem completely obvious are Price of Progress and Vapor Snag, and as you say, Grim Lavamancer makes a lot of sense. It is quite a slow clock with a investment required every turn in order to make use. So
yeah, Delver, Goblin Guide, and Snapcaster Mage, so all I think right where Terrell wants to be.
Yeah. Now, days is always an interesting question because oftentimes High Tide will just make the dazes completely irrelevant, but at the same time, an early daze can be really devastating.
Yeah, and I think that even on the draw, Terrell is going to want to leave those dazes in. If I was in his position, I would. He's looking,
like him.
Yeah, he's looking to deploy that early pressure, force Michael's hand, and it's sort of a situation where if Michael gets to the point where he has enough mana to play around days, real bad news for Terrell anyway. Terrell wants to apply pressure, force Michael to cast something, force him to play into that daze.
Okay, we're going to a harrowing game 3 here. Michael Tabler will be on the play versus Terrell Boaz, and you can see him looking pretty tired there. And Terrell has been smiley all day, and he looks like he's also gotten hit by the tired bug in the last 20 minutes.
Yep, chooses to mulligan his opener. I think we're going to see Michael keep. He hasn't indicated yet that we know of, but hasn't made any motion to mulligan. And 6 cards for Terrell. Are these good enough? Little shake of the head and keeps his hand. Tabler starts with a Scalding Tarn, immediately fetching out an island.
Michael Tabler's High Tide list, pretty conventional for the most part. Usually the way that these deck lists are built, you have a little bit of wiggle room here and there. Do you want to have 2 preordain, 3 preordain? How many cantrips do you want to fit in there? But basically, for the most part, you can usually expect to see a core 55-ish cards in the main deck that are the same.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty standard list to me. It does have 3 Flusterstorms, which are, great to fight counter magic, great to fight other combo decks, so it makes a lot of sense why he would want that. And wow, even on that mulligan, looks like a pretty good hand for Terrell. He does at least have that turn 1 Delver that we saw be very important in the last game.
Now, if you're not on Twitter following at SCG Live, I'm not sure why, but also you can follow awesome people like Jerry Thompson of StarCityGames.com writing and otherwise broadcasting fame. He just tweeted, "Be sure to follow the only person to ever beat me in the top 8 of a pro tour at Swedish Kibler."
Yeah, referring to Joel Larson, who made the finals of the Pro Tour this weekend, losing to Star City Games writer, recently acquired by Star City Games, Tom Martell.
And right now, Michael Tabler, High Tide with a Candelabra in play on turn 2. Terrell Boaz has a Delver. It does not yet know the secret.
Oh, and I think we're going to see a Goblin Guide and another Delver come down for Terrell. So High Tide, not generally a deck that can win on turn 3, as we were discussing. A little slower, sacrificing that speed for a bit more consistency and redundancy.
And Terrell does not lay the... If that was a Delver, he does not lay it. Another Candle and no third land for Michael.
Wow. Yeah, you've heard me mentioning in this match how important it is for Michael to play an island every turn. And we didn't see one there.
Oh my god, another Goblin Guide in for 5. No land.
Brainstorm.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Well, there is a Brainstorm, which will let Michael see 3 more cards if it resolves, but real rough shape for Michael here.
Main phase Brainstorm, the best
Brainstorm.
kind.
Can't cast it fast enough. And does Terrell have any response? I think if he does, he will want to pull the trigger on that.
I would pull the trigger.
Looking, playing with an island, seeing if he wants to. Okay, Spell Pierce.
I like it. I like it, Terrell.
Yeah, getting aggressive and a Flusterstorm back from Michael. So clearly saying this Brainstorm is important to me. And
that was maybe
Force
a
of Will
mistake there, unless he targeted the Brainstorm.
Huh.
I don't know what he targeted with that Pyroblast.
Yeah, he probably targeted the Brainstorm. It looks like that's the way this is.
Whatever the case.
Force of Will from Michael. So tons of spells flying back and forth, and this Brainstorm does resolve.
Yeah, and 2 cards put back, but look at that, Brainstorm locked. Did not get a land.
Wow.
Look at Terrell there, the smile back. We saw this smile earlier today. In they come. Reveal,
Time
takes
Spiral.
5, goes down, and yeah.
Yeah, gonna draw that Time Spiral that we just saw.
So he's what he's doing here, he's counting. He's like, okay, I might be able to go off on 2 lands. Let's find out.
I have never seen a High Tide deck go off on 2 lands. I've played a lot of High Tide myself.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, wow. Oh, Force
on the
Brainstorm. What are we seeing here?
Okay.
Thumbs up.
It resolves. Untap. I've got 4 mana. Okay, let's untap this. I've got 2. I've got 6. Time Spiral.
God.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Well, that's...
Oh, Doctor.
Normally you want to untap more than 2 lands with the Time Spiral, but he's going to work with what he's got. We see...
Oh, Doctor, this is...
Wow, that is...
that's so exciting. I actually have no idea what the storm count is right now.
Probably a lot after that Brainstorm that they fought over so fiercely. Actually, that was last turn, the Brainstorm.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
So not as many.
You know, Michael Tabler here with that Time Spiral is allowed to untap up to 6 lands, so we'll see if he gives Terrell a break.
He may target the Volcanic Island and Mountain. He's probably just going to choose his own 2 islands. You know,
now, the thing is, he has this Time Spiral. He is still not out of the woods. The Tide only at 2.
Yeah, he used all that mana for Time Spiral, so he's going to untap these 2 lands. He's going to have access to 4 mana and 7 cards. We'll see what he can do with it.
Are the only spells he's cast this turn High Tide and Time Spiral?
I believe so. Oh,
and Force of Will?
Force of Will that protected the... Yeah.
Okay, so there are 4 cards that have been... right now, we are trying to recreate that last turn. We believe the storm count is at 4 from High Tide, Time Spiral, Force of Will, and Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, and we see...
0
player
mana
drawing
floating.
7.
This is, like I said, still very, very rough.
And plays land for the turn. I think I see a High Tide in Michael's hand. Is that the card at the front? I'm sure we'll see pretty soon.
If you're just joining us.
Huh.
Wow.
Okay. Taps that, adding 2, using 1 for High Tide. Tide is now at 3. as Adrian said, Michael not out of the woods yet, but doing good work.
Oh, boy.
And flips Brainstorm there. And
1 mana floating. Storm at 5. Tied at 3.
yeah, as I said, never seen a high tide deck go off of 2 islands. So
It's difficult.
he has a third now, but this would still be very impressive. Michael just shuffling up here. We see a Time Spiral in his hand, a Spell Pierce, and what looks like a Pact of Negation. He's going to tap 2.
Total of 5 mana. Hang on a second. He's
Tide's
tied
at
at 3. Total of 1 mana floating.
Oh, this is going to happen.
Okay.
So Terrell shuffles away those 7 cards.
1 mana still floating. Look at that
exiles the
smile.
Time Spiral.
Oh, boy.
This is looking pretty rough for Terrell.
Now remember, Terrell still has access to Flusterstorms, to Surgical Extraction, to Force of Will. It's not over yet, and Michael has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, as you mentioned, Days, not so good right now.
Actually, it's not terrible. I mean, it's going to be pretty tight on mana. It's not great, but it's not terrible.
If we see Days come up, that would be pretty
You know,
pretty
that would
wild.
be exciting if it was a Days
Yeah.
game. Ooh. Deja. I'm dazed.
And both players drawing 7.
I have to tell you, watching this deck play out, I actually really am excited about the possibility of playing a Blue-Red Delver deck in Legacy. I think it might be a really good choice. The final mana is sucked up to put the Tide at 4.
And even with just 3 islands, Tide of 4 is still very dangerous. Michael tapping one of those islands for 4, and starting this
3 mana
new
left.
hand of 7 off after that high tide with a Ponder.
You can
We'll
see
see.
Terrell. What's he thinking about doing? Surgicaling something?
Surgical that high tide.
I think it's a little too late for that.
Tide's high. Tide's high at this point. It's pretty high.
The tide is pretty high.
And a couple of high tides go out there. But at 4 already, we see a hand from Michael of Turnabout, Brainstorm, 2 Islands, and Misty Rainforest. So Michael has this Ponder and that Brainstorm to find more action. He's already played a land, so he's not going to be able to shuffle with Misty. Michael shuffling his deck from that Surgical Extraction. Oh, and we see a Force of Will in Terrell's hand. So he can counter one of those draw spells. And, you know, this could get really close.
It's going to be close.
As I said in Game 2, always a little dangerous to cast that Time Spiral against an opponent who has Force of Will.
A part of the problem is that every extra land that you have in play, it does thin your deck out during all of this manipulation. With only 3 lands in play, there's just extra land in the deck. It actually does matter.
Yep, and we're going to see Michael pick up a... couldn't see what that was, but
Okay,
he
here is a decision
fires
point.
off a Brainstorm. So Terrell does not know about that one mystery card in Michael's hand, but he knows that besides that mystery card, Brainstorm was the only action that Michael had left.
I would have stopped that one right there.
So 3 new cards allowing Michael to put away 2
boy.
lands.
That was a Braincestral recall, practically.
We see
Candelabra.
a Candelabra come down, increasing the storm count, going to give Michael a lot more mana.
And Michael Tabler doing a Kibler impression here. Taps for a total of 9 mana.
Yeah,
4
I think
plus
we're
4
gonna
plus 1.
See that Candelabra untapping 3 lands here, putting him down to 6.
6 mana. Turnabout. 2 mana.
I think he's going to use this turnabout on himself for artifact. We
think
might see that.
I think you're correct. I think that's going to be his plan.
3 candelabras is kind of a lot. And Terrell thinking about that one. Shuffles Force of Will to the front.
He's thinking about it. Oh boy. Look at those bolts in his hand, Michael. And he does not cast the Force of Will on it. I don't mind that one bit.
So now a ton of mana for Michael.
Up to 14.
I'm not sure how much mana that's going to produce, but I think 9 for each candelabra, right?
Time Spiral.
Time Spiral again.
8. We see
and this is what he chooses to Force of Will. So we'll
tosses Snapcaster. Flusterstorm comes back. Oh, Doctor.
We'll see what Terrell has.
And this is another Time Spiral here. What you gonna do, Terrell?
Looks like a Surgical and a couple of Lightning Bolts. I think we're gonna
do it.
Huh.
Surgical. I'm guessing targeting the Brainstorm.
Yeah, he may target Brainstorm, just hoping that
Brainstorm.
He may target Brainstorm.
What did he get?
I think. Not sure.
Turnabout is removed by Terrell. So this means right now that he is continually tearing out cards from Michael Tabler's deck, trying to make it less likely for Michael to be able to go off. Now, at this point, the storm count from this interaction of all of these time spirals, the instance that both of these players have access to, has gotten so large that Michael is very close to being able to get the entire library out of there with a brain freeze. But that does not mean that he would necessarily win. Terrell would still be able to untap with whatever cards he has in hand. And the Snapcaster sits on the sidelines, removed from the game by Force of Will. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here in the booth with the one and only Ben Hayes in one of his last huzzahs before he goes off to Seattle to be a member of Wizards of the Coast's R&D team. Hopefully he'll be able to keep everybody out over there in line. What do you say, Ben? Are you going to keep him in line out there in Seattle?
Yeah, I hope so. I'm looking forward to maybe printing a couple more Boros Reckoners.
More Boros Reckoners, says Ben Hayes. Okay, you're fired. No. Actually, I really like Boros Reckoners, so I wouldn't actually say that. I'm just having fun. Terrell, Boaz here, and Michael Tabler finishing off what is likely to be one of the last turns of Magic for this semifinals. And then we're going to give one of you out there a Star City Games premium giveaway of 6 free months if you got the correct answer to our trivia question. Okay, let's see what we got. Terrell is not done yet. Michael still has not won. As I said before, I mean, I remember one time playing in the High Tide matchup against Merfolk and literally casting Time Spiral 4 times and just not being able to go off because my opponent continuously just kept countering everything that mattered. And this is something that Terrell could certainly do. Michael Tabler here. 8 mana in pool, if that count is correct. There's been so much of a flurry of mana that I'm not actually sure if he's got 8 mana in pool. I believe he has 8 mana in pool currently. The Tide at 4, each island capable of producing 4 mana. Terrell. We see a brain freeze leaving 6 mana, and this would knock, I believe, Terrell's library 48 cards away. He's like, sure, yeah, that's okay. Scoops it on up. That is it. Michael Tabler laughing a little bit to himself. That was a wacky turn. He had 2 land in play at the beginning of that turn. Michael Tabler started the turn with 2 land and ended it there with 3 land in play. So Michael Tabler, our victor, 2-1. We got a tag in here of who? Glenn Jones. Who? Okay.
That was an interesting match to watch.
Yeah.
Definitely a big win for High Tide, coming off of getting stuck on 2 lands there. Very difficult space for High Tide to actually win from.